Who are we? We are the ones who step up for each other. I've got your back. You've got mine. Kindness, humility, empathy. It's not just talk. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. And no one can take that from us. The movement to bring it back, it started here. And here. And here. In school gymnasiums, community centers, the living room down the block. You'll be where? Okay, we'll be there. Who are we? We're the movement that will beat Donald Trump. Welcome. We're going to have to sweat for it. We're going to have to sacrifice and fight. We're going to have to lead. Everyone is going to have to lead with kindness, humility, empathy, and not just talk, but action. Action today, action tomorrow. Action until we win. And we will win if we do this together. It's who we are. It's who we always have been. Now let's show them.
Thank you for joining this Biden-Harris campaign, Make It Happen Monday. And now please welcome Biden-Harris Campaign Director of African American Engagement, Trey Baker.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Make It Happen Monday. We're so happy to be coming to you live from Minnesota and virtually from Minnesota. And this conversation is so important. It's a conversation about Black-owned businesses and small businesses in the Black community and Black entrepreneurship. It's being said that 40% of Black-owned businesses will not recover from COVID-19. And so we have these conversations to come up with solutions and to talk about what will happen in a Biden-Harris administration and how Biden-Harris administration will be far greater than anything that's going on now. For the Black community and for Black-owned businesses. So we have an exciting conversation for you this evening featuring the great mayor of St. Paul, Mayor Melvin Carter. So we're excited to hear from him. And we also have a really good roundtable discussion for you tonight featuring Black-owned business leaders from the state of Minnesota. So before we get into that, we've got a little housekeeping that we need to do. First, we want to thank our media partners for tonight, Black Enterprise. So tonight we are being streamed live through all of Black Enterprise's social media platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're coming at you live. So thank you to all of you who are watching on Black Enterprise's social media platform. We appreciate you, and we think you're going to have a good discussion tonight. Also, just a reminder, we are today 50 days out from this election. But although election day is November 3rd, we're going to give you some more information tonight about how you engage with early voting, which starts this week for you there in Minnesota. And so we want to look at this election as voting season and not necessarily just an election day. So we want to get in there, we want to vote safely, and we want to bank our votes very early. The one thing that I want you all to do tonight is to join our list so you can get our updates. So if you can, please take out your phones, and I want you to text AFAM, that's AFAM, AFAM to 30330. If you come onto our list, we will be able to get you in, get you the invitations, and get you ready to go. So with that said, I will turn it over to our hosts each week. We have our hosts, Benta Brown and Michael Blake, to come to us and take us through this journey. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to one of our favorite entrepreneurs, Benta Brown, and one of our favorite members of the DNC, Mr. Michael Blake.
Good evening, everybody. I wasn't sure whether Mr. Michael Blake was going to go first or whether I should go first. So apologies if it looked like we were both speaking to you at the same time. We'll do that from time to time. because it's that important that we be in this kind of alignment in order for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish over the next 50 days. Welcome to Make It Happen Monday. It's a great pleasure for us to be here virtually, as the case is, in the great state of Minnesota. I was heartened when I read over the weekend that notwithstanding all of the efforts by the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, to use law and order to effectively suppress the vote or to close the gap, that Minnesotans have been resistant to that. And so incredibly heartened by that, but also know at the same time, given the penchant for this campaign, not our campaign, but the Trump campaign, to be flagrantly dishonest, to say one thing, to say the truth behind closed doors, and then to tell the rest of us something different, that we have our work cut out for us. And that every day for the next 50 days, the campaign or the election has already started, given that early voting starts soon. More on that later. But that every day for the next 50 days, it's incumbent upon each of us to do everything we can to elect Biden and Harris. Why? Because we know that their plan for Black America is the right plan for Black America. We know that our community is hurting, our businesses are hurting, and that if we have any chance at making a comeback, it's going to be with the policies and plans, the actual plans, like they have actual plans that Biden and Harris have put together. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my delightful co-host, Mr. Michael Blake, and I'm sure that he will fill in the fine lines that we've already outlined. Thank you all so much.
Always, thank you, Binta, and thank you everybody for being with us tonight. For everyone, great to be with you, Michael Blake, Vice Chair of DNC, and like you, I'm adamant about what we're doing for our Black businesses. Everybody, let's make this as plain as we can. We have 50 days to win so that our people can make it for the next 50 years and beyond. We got to be all in. And when we talk about being all in, a lot of that comes from what we do around Black business, and thank you to Black Enterprise and so many other allies. And a large part of this will be what happens within the great state of Minnesota, a state that has meant a lot to me. It's a state where I spent my Super Tuesday in 2008. I always tease, I never experienced cold like I did in Minnesota. I didn't realize you could have a wind chill and have a high of 0 3 days in a row. But you know, we come here because we got work to do. We want everybody to know, again, as a reminder, you hear this a lot tonight, voting begins for you all on Friday, September 18th. Do not wait. There's no excuses for us to wait. We got to be in the game right now. And we have to be mobilized right now. A lot of our conversations every Monday night, we do this every Monday night around access to capital, access to contracting, changes around procurement. How do we make sure we help our businesses get in the game? And one major way we do that is by having great leaders, in particular, great mayors who can help transform the game with us. I am definitely slightly biased because he is a brother of the greatest fraternity in the world, Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Just gonna put that out there so there's no confusion about that in that manner. But you know, Melvin continues to make so many of us proud with his leadership. We've spent time through our New Leaders Council interactions for our young professionals. Of course, we've seen him stepping up as always and leading when it comes to justice, and without a doubt has been leading and making sure we're helping our Black businesses get the opportunities that they have in other ways they otherwise would not. So as we continue this conversation, for those that are joining us for the first time, we will have a great panel discussion. Chris Upperman, one of our Obama-Biden alumni, will lead that conversation, keep us moderating in that manner. But allow me right now to invite our great leader, our great champion, the great mayor from St. Paul, Mayor Melvin Carter, to join us right now for a fireside chat on the state of Black business. Mayor Carter, thank you. Thank you, thank you. We're proud of you, we're grateful for you. I'm glad you're showing people that A5A in the background, but let's let them know what you're thinking, Mayor Carter.
Brother Blake, I appreciate you telling me that. I appreciate the introduction. Yes, I have an AFIA in the background. If you can see that little black hat, that's also a rattler there, because I also went to the HBCU, known as Florida A&M University. So if you don't know, now you know. I appreciate the opportunity to join on this call. This is so important on so many levels. We are witnessing right now a generational level moment that our children and grandchildren, and probably great grandchildren at least, will look at and recognize as a transition, as a transference, a great transference of wealth in America. We have seen over and over and over, every single time that's happened, it's never happened in a way that's benefited us. It's never happened under a president who has had our primary interests at heart right there. You know, when we think about these large generational level shifts, the multiple crises, some people say we are in a crisis. Brother Blake, that's an understatement. We are in crisis after crisis after crisis right now that starts with a global pandemic, but then includes that economic pandemic that's come along with it. We are facing the pandemic of race and racism in America right now. Cities like St. Paul, Minneapolis, and a number of our communities across the country have, of course, experienced civil unrest that has left us rebuilding the same neighborhoods that have been most gutted by all of these other kind of factors as well. Right here in St. Paul, we're a city of 315,000 people. Not 315,000 working age adults, 315,000 people total. That includes my children. We've had over 80,000 people apply for unemployment insurance since March 15th alone. So that's a breathtaking, staggering, devastating number for us. And when we know that all of our businesses, literally all of our businesses, and especially all of our small businesses are struggling, and when we know that the next chapter will belong, frankly, to those businesses who had the capital, who had the patience, who had the credit, who had the support, to be able to redefine their business models, to be able to take their business models online, to be able to sort of wait out the storm, to be able to kind of get through this moment, we know that there are a significant set of disadvantages for our community. I heard somebody say that prediction that potentially up to 40% without some level of intervention, up to 40% of Black-owned businesses are likely to not make it through this economic crisis. That would be even more staggering. And we know that's not 40% from zero. That's 40% on top of all of the like compound challenges, all the compound disparities that we already face as a community. That could be incredibly devastating for us. So when I look at the Biden restart package, I see a lifeblood. I almost see like an IV for Black businesses in our country to say, you know, how do we make sure that our businesses have access to capital so they can get through this moment? How do we make sure that we're providing the type of technical assistance and support so our businesses can constantly think and rethink their business models and meet the day with some of the new kind of business imperatives that and marketplaces that are opening up in this moment? And how do we think even just beyond sort of the narrow specifics of business to the, you know, kind of broad picture of housing and home ownership, affordable rental, the kind of societal and community type of challenges that impact our community's abilities to be whole? I think, you know, I really appreciate Vice President Biden's vision for all of this. It goes without saying that the alternative is dire for us, as we currently have a president who not only doesn't have this big vision, but has very publicly opposed these types of visions and has very publicly been hostile toward the type of goals that we're talking about. We have a lot of work to do in these next 50 days.
Thank you, Mayor. Allow me, in the way you just framed it, you know, and I've been very clear with people that for Black folk, this is about physical survival and this is about economic survival, plain and simple. It would be great to hear from you, you know, who's doing great work in Minnesota around access to capital, access to contracting, you know, so that we can amplify those best practices. And quite frankly, equally, if you were to say there is one specific thing that you want to see out of the Biden-Harris administration that can open the doors to Black businesses, what would you say that would be, Mayor? So again, first question being, who's doing it well? who's providing access to capital, access to contracting, who are the CDFIs and others in Minnesota that should be on the radar? And then secondly, if there was one or even two things you want to see out of the administration, what would that be to provide help to the companies that need it right now?
Yep, I appreciate the questions. I think one, we had a great Black Business is Beautiful celebration just a couple of days ago right here in St. Paul. That was hosted by the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce, was a partner with that, with an organization here called The Lab. That was beautiful. It was incredible. Live music out there. You had Black businesses, they were social distancing and taking all the types of precautions, but helping to expose people to those types of businesses. There's a program called, there's an organization here based out of St. Paul called Nexus Community Partners, who are really pioneering the notion. And there's a couple other cities around the country who are thinking about this as well, of employee-owned co-ops. As you think about the percentage of businesses that are owned by baby boomers, as you think about the percentage of businesses that are owned by baby boomers, the percentage of them who want to sell their business pretty soon, especially right now, and know that very few of them will successfully sell their business. We're already facing a generational turning point with regard to economic activity. So providing technical support to employees who want to think about buying their business. That way we can keep the jobs, we can keep the tax base, we can keep the economic activity, we can keep the real estate active in our community. That's something that I think is pretty promising. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that work of Nexus Community Partners continues to evolve. I'll tell you, as I think about what the administration could and should do, there's access. I mean, there's all the things that are really in that restart package. We need access to capital. We know the disparities around banking and lending and things like that disadvantage our community, that disadvantage our business owners. We know that there are significant disparities in regard to venture capital, and where kind of those venture capital funders put their dollars, put those startup dollars, they don't often enough come to business owners in our Black community. We created with an organization here in Minnesota, we created a $1 million business plan competition, a pitch contest for businesses owned by people of color, where every year we have business owners from literally across the globe come to St. Paul to pitch against one another. And our goal is to keep as many of them here as we possibly can. But if I just narrowed it down to one thing, federal contracting, federal procurement has been such a labyrinth for Black-owned businesses for so long. It's been a process that has created generational wealth for some families while completely locking other families out. I like to remind us, and we're doing the same work at the city level, but at all levels of government, this is our money that we're putting into that pot. And if we can never take out of that pot, well, that's criminal. That's robbery. And so, one of the things that I'll be looking to the Biden administration to do is to make sure that those processes are easy to understand, they're accessible and easy to navigate, so the businesses in our community can compete and successfully achieve and land those kind of federal contracts, so that we can participate in the economic prosperity that we're contributing to in the first place. I think that's the first basic thing that we all have to just do in order to build upon all of the other stuff that we ambition.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. One of my favorite moments, as an artist manager and music executive, has been touring through St. Paul. It's a university town, and notwithstanding the blizzard, or what I would characterize as being a blizzard, university town, great audience. People come out even when it's 0 degrees for some good music. Many of the venues which we've toured through, I anticipate at this point are on the brink of closing in St. Paul. And so this is a similar question to the question that Michael just asked you, but it gets a little bit away from the idea of federal contracting, because as we know, like not every Black business or every small business is a business that's going to be building itself on the basis of contracts with the federal government and otherwise. So as you look at the Biden-Harris plan for Black America, and as you think about your own needs as a mayor of a city that has businesses that are definitely closing, what are the things in that plan that are most helpful to you as mayor, and that you think will be most helpful to Black business owners, regardless of whether or not they are businesses that lend themselves to government contracting.
Yeah, look, Vince, I appreciate the question. So one, Michael exaggerated. The winter is not that bad. We do just fine up here. You get some boots and you get a coat and you'll survive it just fine. So let's take care of that right now. Two, you're right. We have some incredible music and incredible live music scene up here. You know, I like to remind folks when we had the Super Bowl here, BET came to do the Super Bowl kind of jazz brunch, and they said we're going to bring some down home music to St. Paul, to Minnesota. And I said, well, that's great. But have you ever heard of like the Sounds of Blackness? Have you ever heard of like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis? Have you ever heard of like Prince? Have you ever heard of some of these folks? We know a little bit about music up here. And so I had to remind them of that. As you talk, you're right. Not all businesses will compete for kind of federal contracts. As I run a city government for the just over $500 million that we marshal each year, I'm always reminded that as I talk about the way the world ought to be, the first thing I have to do is demonstrate that with my behavior as far as how we hire, how we appoint, how we do procurement and spending and contracting, et cetera. So that's why I say that's to me the first step. But here's the thing I would say is where our communities of color are concerned and where like prosperity, where justice and equity are concerned, we always find ourselves kind of in America saying, kind of what's the one thing we should do? What's the silver bullet? And a lot of time, what's the cheapest thing that we should do? And, you know, I think our community has suffered by this kind of single bullet mentality that politicians have sold us to say, this is the one thing, this is the silver plan or whatever it is. And I would tell you the thing that I think that sets this Biden plan apart, all of those specific kind of programs I talked about, I think are important. The thing that I think ultimately sets it apart is that it's embedded in this more holistic and systemic kind of vision for this different type of community economy that we're going to build. To say, for the future president to acknowledge we cannot disconnect the fate of Black businesses right now from the education of Black babies, and we cannot disconnect the education of our Black babies from the public safety scene in our neighborhoods. And when we think about public safety, it has to be expanded beyond just a police approach. It can't just be about responding to violent crime after it happens. It's got to be about intervening before it happens to help reduce the likelihood that our youngest children will be impacted by, will be victims of, will be exposed to violent crime and criminal activity as young children, because we know that traumatizes them. So to me, and it may not be a direct response to the question, but to me, the biggest kind of secret ingredient, or the biggest kind of active ingredient in this whole plan, is the fact that there's so many different pieces of it working together. That's, I think, what's unique that we haven't really seen before, funded at a federal level at least.
Absolutely. So, you know, Mayor, as we're bringing this home before going to the roundtable, and just want to say thank you, and again, as I always say, incredibly inspired and proud of what everything you're doing for this next 50 days, and quite frankly, for the next 4 sole days, because as you know, voting starts for you all on Friday. Your marching orders to the people of Minnesota, and very directly to Black folk who might be sitting on the sidelines, may not be engaging, may not be mobilizing, convey what's at stake for Minnesota, what's at stake for Black folks, what's at stake for St. Paul, if we do not bring this home, would be a perfect way to close this out and transition into the roundtable.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, Hillary Clinton won Minnesota by like 1.5 percentage points. I believe we were the 6th closest state by way of kind of margin of victory in the country. I assume you see like I see. I open my mailbox literally every day. I open my computer, my phone every day. I see that the Trump team is spending millions of dollars trying to figure out how to court votes in Minnesota, and not just votes in Minnesota, but Black votes in Minnesota. And they're trying what we've seen before, this kind of all of a sudden every 4 years show up with some ads on our radio stations and show up with some heavy spend in our communities, put some photographs on a glossy mailer and put it in our mailbox and think that they can fool us into thinking this president stands for us. My Angelou said, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them. Our current president has told us over and over and over and over and over again who he is, what he thinks of us, what he thinks of our community, and what he thinks of the whole movement to establish the value and worth of Black lives at the national level. He's told us that over and over and over again. So the way Minnesota works, just so you know, is, we can't win statewide without every single vote counting in the Twin Cities metro area, right? And so our goal over these next 50 days is certainly going to be to persuade people who aren't sure whether they're going to vote for Joe Biden or whether they're going to vote for Donald Trump, persuade them to come this way. But our bigger task is going to be to take people in this community, people in our city who we know will be better off under a Biden presidency than they will be under a Trump presidency, making sure they get out of this kind of sense of complacency or sense of helplessness or sense of whatever it is, and making sure that they if they're complaining, put it into action. If you're frustrated, put it into action. If you're worried, put it into action. My first question for everybody is vote. As soon as early voting opens, vote so we can get ourselves out of the way so we can kind of have that conversation. But then the second piece is, don't let a day go by. Please don't let a day go by without having a conversation about someone, that 18-year-old niece or nephew of yours, or your coworkers, your neighbors. Have a conversation with someone. Do not let a day go by, please, without having a conversation with someone about how important it is that they get out and vote. We're expecting a high turnout, and we know it's going to be close. So the fact that our African-American community, we can literally be what I think of as, in Minnesota, we are a rudder-sized community here. So our vote might not be the whole ship. We know what the state's population looks like, but our vote can be the rudder that steers it. We are definitely that large of a community, be the rudder that steers it. And if we stand up, if we get out, if we talk to each other, if we make sure that people understand that we're excited, and there's this notion that, let's talk about it. People say, well, it's better than Trump. He's not. Look, this plan is powerful. It's one of the biggest plans I've ever seen, and we need to be pushing back every time somebody tries to pretend we're settling for Biden or anything along those lines. We need to make sure that people understand, look, there's a plan on housing, there's a plan on employment, there's a plan on education, there's a plan on business connectivity, there's a plan on public safety and police reform. Like, this plan is something that's going to be incredible for our community, and the alternative is unacceptable for us.
Thank you, brother. And Friday is a perfect transition, because Friday is National Black Voter Day, and what you all going to be doing is getting that rocking. I'm looking to see how Minnesota sets the tone on Friday. And letting them know once again that Black is beautiful. So to Mayor Carter.
Don't worry about it, Brother Blake. I like to remind people that when former President Abraham Lincoln sent out the word for volunteers, Minnesota was the first community to respond. So we like being in leadership in that way.
Right now. All right. You said it here first. So we ready to rock right there.
That's right.
So to Mayor Melvin Carter, we can't thank you enough, my brother. And always, and I'm going to turn this over to Benta Brown to introduce our panel for tonight, to keep us going and building from here.
Thanks, Michael, and thank you, Mayor. I mean, this is a great conversation, right? Because we know that Black is beautiful. We know that Black matters. We know that Black folks can swing the vote, and that we make the difference. And we also know, for those of us who have been charged by the mayor, which is all of us, to speak to at least one other person, I would raise him a couple and say, speak to 3 different people every single day. Just keep going. There is no shame, because what we're really articulating to one another right now is that we are voting for ourselves because we matter, right? So to vote is the most powerful expression of self-belief that we have as Black people. So with no further ado, let me bring in our incredible panel from Minnesota. We've got four Minnesotans here, including a native of Chicago, which is where I'm currently based. Ray Richardson, on-air personality and DJ from KMOJ FM, native of Chicago. Ray is a veteran journalist. He's an author and personality, and he hosts the show Back in the Day, which we're told is one of the most popular R&B oldies radio shows in the country. Show airs every Sunday night from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And is geared to R&B hits from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I am sure, Ray, that you did not necessarily appreciate the competition that you had from Versus last night with the Queen's Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle, taking out some of your energy, but hopefully you found a way to profit off that, if you will. We also have on this panel Tom Gita, who is the founder and publisher of Mshale Communications. The Mshale newspaper is an award-winning newspaper, is one of the largest news outlets serving African immigrants in the Midwest. He started this paper speaking about Black entrepreneurship. He started the newspaper while in college, and it just celebrated its 25th anniversary this year. We also have Chris Montana. You know, for those of you who have traveled with us from state to state, this is the first time we've had a distiller, let alone a Black distiller. He's the CEO and head distiller of Du Nord. Now, what I don't know is what kind of beverages Du Nord is distilling, but I do know that I need to get my hands on a bottle or two of it, whatever it is, because I am sure that it is fantastic. Chris is grew up in several different neighborhoods in Minneapolis, but he spent most of his time in South Minneapolis in Prospect Park. Prospect Park in Minneapolis, not to be confused, Michael Blake, with the Prospect Park on the other coast, where you are. Listen, we want to keep it lively. We want to keep it interesting. Oh, I didn't know this fact, that you're a licensed attorney. So at some point, maybe not today, but it would be great to find out how a licensed, well, I think we all know how a licensed attorney ends up working in spirits. So maybe we don't have to ask that question. And then we finally have, but not least, Stefanetta Harmon. Stefanetta is a communications consultant of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, a Black beauty editor. As we can see, look at this girl. She is styling, got the blue lips and everything. A Black beauty editor, advocate, curator, and communications consultant with more than 20 years of editorial and digital media experience, covering and creating stories that celebrate the power, impact, and business of Black beauty and entrepreneurship. So let's get into it, y'all, with this panel. I did not go through every single element of your detailed and robust bios. Please forgive me. No insult is meant, but time is limited, and we got to talk about how we're going to make it happen in Minnesota. So, opening it up for the first question. Let's see. You guys have been doing this in Minnesota, getting together for a little bit. So the Minnesota crowd is probably used to this format just a little bit. I'm going to put this question to Ray for starters. When you're thinking about community, and as somebody who works in radio and is covering what happens in the community in the midst of also bringing the best of the 60s, 70s, and 80s R&B music, how important is small business to what you do? How important is small business to your format?
Well, small business is very important because we know that a lot of small businesses don't have the multi-million-dollar budgets that a lot of Fortune 500 companies here in this town have. And they know that KMOJ has been an ally for them to get their word out, to get their message out. If they want to connect to the diverse community in this market, the Minneapolis-St. Paul market, they can come to KMOJ and help sell their business, sell their products, and not just businesses, but also community organizations and agencies who may be on a smaller level. They know that KMOJ is there for them. And it's been like that since we've been in the market since 1976. The one thing that has changed over the years is that we've gotten better with our technology. We can stream now. We're on the webpage. We're on an app now. So we have even a more deeper platform for any business of any size to use our market to get their message out to a diverse audience. And we pride ourselves in that, and we run our business based on that, and it's been very successful for us.
Stefanetta, I mean, you're what I love about this panel is that with communications, meaning media and radio, and a distillery and beauty, there's actually a link between what all of you all do, and that makes it fun. And also, I hope will create opportunities for us tonight to get into some interactive discussion with one another, time permitting. But Stefanetta, just turning to you briefly, you know, as somebody who works in Black beauty, we started to have this conversation with the mayor about the effect on live venues. Certainly, Black salons and barbershops in Minnesota have also been negatively affected. Would love to get some of your perspective on the importance of those businesses to the Black community, but also the broader community within Minnesota and beyond. And to take it just a step further, from your perspective as somebody who consults and covers in this space, what is needed in order, aside from, you know, ending the pandemic?
Right.
Like that's a given, you know, aside from ending the pandemic and having a safe vaccine that is available to folks, what is needed in order to help restart some of these businesses? How are they doing right now?
I mean, overall, I mean, it's the same conversation. It's a lack of resources, lack of funding. You think a pandemic shut cities down March, trying to reopen, trying to, and sources of income just stopped, especially if you're thinking beauty, you're thinking small businesses. We're already under, you know, we're self-funded primarily, sole proprietorships, contractors. We don't have large capital gains or capital that to rest on in times of need. So like literally when the salon shut down, all finances shut down. Can you imagine you going to work today and they saying you don't get paid tomorrow? And then you don't get a check for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And then in order to open back up, you have to now invest money and resources into protective gear, into masks, into sanitation, into all these little things that are, one, hard to come by, sprays. Two, it's affecting your bottom line. You were able to do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 heads a day. Now you have to space them out maybe 1 or 2 at a time, not one at a time, one at a time. But hours in between, you're losing even the amount of money that you can make per day now. So we're not even taking those things into account. And then you're looking at communities that, you know, during civil unrest were completely destroyed. Businesses that were destroyed. There were businesses along Lake Street in Hennepin that just were doing beautification efforts just this past weekend, just to entice and invite people to come back to support them. So now they're open, but how do I get you to come back? How do I get you to not only feel safe to come back because of the pandemic, but how do I get you to feel safe to come back because we're still trying to rebuild our stores? So it's so many different things that we're looking at in that regard. And at the base of it, it's financing, it's capital, especially Black women. We bear the brunt when it comes to beauty salon work, and we're the least funded. And if we're the least funded and we're self-funded and we're not getting any, we're not scalable. We don't have the products to sell. We're service oriented. So if you're service oriented, self-funded, you're not scalable. And we're looking at people think like ownership is a major thing where now you become rich because you own a business. We're looking at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 annual income for folks and so how do you begin to build even your own foundation while you're still building your job? You're not your job, but your business. So is this catch-22? So yeah, I hope that.
Stefanetta hits on
Yes.
some really, really important points in this, namely that unlike our white counterparts, many, not most, I mean, there certainly are some instances where this might not be true, but many Black-owned businesses do not have the benefit of sustaining inherited generational wealth that helps us to get through crises. And we are oftentimes bootstrapping and taking from one place where we're making money and putting it in another place to try to keep things afloat. Much harder to do when you've been shut down for 4 to 6 months. So bringing in Tom into this conversation, you're a newspaper man. My daddy was a newspaper man.
Right.
And what I know from my daddy is that the newspaper business, and I didn't even need to know this from my father because this is public knowledge, but the newspaper business was in danger even before the pandemic. So, talk to us a little bit about, we know the importance of good information, right? We don't have to have that conversation. We see the effects of bad information all the time, unfortunately, in our democracy. But talk to us a little bit about how you have managed to sustain, even through COVID, what resources you've pulled upon, and what you would need in order to keep going and to keep building and expanding.
Yes, thanks, Yuventa. Yeah, I mean, as you have said, the newspaper business has been in trouble even before COVID. And right now, actually, from Charlotte, the way we've been surviving is through a few grants that came our way. There's some community organizations that have been doing grants that, we were able to tap into, and we got some of those. The state has also been doing some, COVID type advertising, to try and get the word out about, the efforts that the state is making in terms of tackling the pandemic. So that's kind of how we've been doing, because as you know, a lot of the money we used to make through ad revenue was like events, which of course are no longer happening. The businesses were, we kind of had a 50-50 type of arrangement where you have some ad revenues maybe are coming from corporations, and then the other 50% maybe are coming from, the small businesses that Stefanetta was talking about. But those ones, they are not there, they are closed, they have started coming back, but they just don't have, advertising is the least of their worries at this point. And in fact, looking back at the previous recession we had, the people who kept us in business were actually the small business and not so much the major corporations, because during the recession, lots of the major corporations just cut down on advertising, and we had to rely on the small business to stay afloat. So currently, as I speak, we are really just surviving almost on fumes, to be honest with you. But we're holding in there because we believe in the mission of keeping our community informed. After publishing for this length of time, it's more than a business now, because it becomes more of an institution. It's on your community asset that needs to be protected in order to get the information out, especially at this time during the pandemic. And now we're actually juggling double duty. Right now we'll be focusing on just the election pretty much around this time going on, but we're kind of juggling, covering the pandemic, and then also, trying to get people to be aware that, hey, even with pandemic, we still need to make sure we are voting and all that kind of stuff.
So thank you, Tom. I want to bring Chris into this conversation. Chris, my expectation, I'm anticipating that given what your business is and the times that we're in, and how I know I feel a lot of the time, that your business is doing okay. At least I hope that it is. I mean, I hope that it is, and I also want to be careful, because obviously we don't want to see everybody, in a really bad situation if your business is doing too well. But I'm certain that you think frequently about expansion, and as a policy buff and somebody who's been active and involved in electoral politics, I'm curious. It's not just the lack of generational wealth in our community; it's also a system of laws and rules and regulations that have actively worked against Black business owners and Black people. Whether on a local basis or on a federal basis. And so I'm just curious, I'm not going to presume that you've had a lot of time to spend with the Biden-Harris plan, but what are the things that you, as you look to scale and to grow your business, are hoping for from a Biden-Harris administration? Like, what do you need specifically? And hopefully this will segue into my co-host, Michael Blake, who really loves to drill down on these questions.
Well, thank you for the question, and it's an honor to be here with all of these amazing people. I think it's a fair question, thinking about, well, what do we need as businesses? And I as I was listening to everyone else, all I could do was shake my head and say, yes, I agree. I worry I don't have much to add of substance, but just to double down, there's talent in the community. There's plenty of talent in the community. It's not an issue of talent. And often I hear folks say, well, we want to help out the Black community. That means we need to get them the skills and the capital. And sometimes there is a need for those skills, but there often are those skills. It's just an access to, the power to use those skills and more.
Is it Chris or is it all of us?
We actually came over. So I was over there. If we could, first of all, I know I speak for everybody. It inspires my spirit watching and seeing you all. And Tom, you said something that has resonated. I think all of you have said this. Like, we are all doing all this because we're not going to let our people suffer, right? Like, at the end of the day, we watch so many people let us go. A question I ask every week, but I think is relevant for this conversation always. What's the one thing you need, God willing, 50 days plus, Biden-Harris administration immediately? And what is something that you need right now that we haven't really talked through? We've kind of talked this out in some different ways, but as we know, the Black business experience is very different in many ways. I'm trying to be attentive myself of showing off some of our Black business here in the Bronx, because I've been telling people often, right? Like, we got to be out here to help our people, right? So tell me what you think on both fronts.
I can go.
We'll start with Tom.
Yeah. Okay. So no problem. Yeah. So immediately, since you asked what I need, so Michelle is membership in what is called the National Newspaper Publishers Association. It's pending. So I know locally here we have. I know that the Biden campaign is planning to do an ad buy. Has already done the ad buy for for Black news, Black media. So I know locally here, Michelle might get missed because we're not part of NNPA yet, but we're planning to. They finally are in the process of approving our membership, we hope. So when you do the ad buy through NNPA, we'll just ask that Michelle be included as well in there, so we can make sure that our African immigrants are also reached, because we might get missed because we're not part of NNPA yet.
Stefanetta, do you want to weigh in on this conversation?
Sure. I would say, for one, the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, of course, is the same conversation, want money. Finances. I founded a Black-owned beauty brand, same situation. It's finances, but it's also a commitment to long-term commitment, actually. Right now, being Black is in vogue. Where it's this thing that everyone's taking to social media to talk about how great they are. And, all this money is being dropped into communities, or we're getting all this access to, oh, here's a new Black-owned grant or a Black-owned business grant for this or that. And now we're chasing pennies. And it's like, okay, here's 20,000 here, here's 10,000, here's 5,000. And it sounds great right now, but when you look at long-term expenses, it's just a drop in the bucket. And I don't want this administration or anyone to think that once you've given $5,000 or $20,000, that's it. This is long-term systemic issues. And so we want a commitment to long-term involvement and engagement to really address the issues that go beyond just being able to finance a business, but the access and awareness and accountability.
I really appreciate what you just said, because so often people seem to be, at least when it comes to our businesses, under the impression that, if you give $2,500, invest $2,500 or $5,000, then that's enough to actually grow a business. But as all of us, each of us here who are entrepreneurs know, it takes a lot more than $2,500 or $5,000. Like you're potentially running losses for the first, 1 to 2, if not 5 years of your business. So, if 5,000 is all you can get, it doesn't really do us many favors. I'm just curious, and Chris, I see that you're back. We lost you mid-sentence. I don't know if you want to take a shot at finishing what you were saying before. I know that we would all love to hear it if you're up to it.
I'm a little gun shy now. I'm worried if I start talking, it's just going to drop me out. Yeah, just briefly, I tell people, so Denord Craft Spirits is the first Black-owned distillery in the country. And so you can look at that two different ways. There's thousands of distilleries out there, and there's one of us. Now there's 3 in the country out of over 2,000. And a lot of that has to do with access to capital. I couldn't get any money when I tried to start this thing up. And so I'm hoping that we get aggressive about not only building some of these Black-owned businesses, but also, yes, we need to own the business. We also need to own the property, because we have to look at this from a holistic standpoint. It's not enough a lot of the folks that we're talking to now, they may have lost their businesses in Lake Street. You got to keep in mind, Denord Craft Spirits right on Lake Street. Well, we're just off of Lake Street. So if you came out of our business in late March, you got tear gas in your eyes, because we're right by the 3rd precinct. That's the epicenter of what happened after George Floyd was murdered. And so, a lot of the people we're working with now, trying to help them get back on their feet, they don't own the property. They don't know when things are going to get rebuilt. And so, they don't have control over their business. And we need to get out of that. We need to get into the position where we are owning the property, where we are owning the business, so we can build that kind of wealth. So that way we are the VCs. So that way the next generation, because we ain't going to get it done for me, but I've got 3 boys. So the next generation, they should be able to walk into a room, propose a business, and have someone look at them as someone who is a credible potential, next star in business. And we may not have that exactly today, but we can do that if we can start to build that wealth. Right. And I know it's money, but money talks. And then that's what we need in our community. And that's what, honestly, the business community broadly needs, is to get all that talent from all those people who can't break through because they just don't have the resources.
I am so glad that you said what you just said about owning property. At the beginning of COVID, I contacted an investment friend, and I said, how can you help me put together a massive fund that will enable me to buy property throughout the United States? And literally just 3 hours ago, I was asking one of my attorneys the same question, is like, what can you do? Because the key to so much of this is property ownership, but also like working with zoning and tax laws to ensure that we can lower rents for live venues that are otherwise struggling, and for barbershops and a whole bunch of other things, but also make sure that the mix of businesses, that we preserve a mix of businesses that goes beyond, with all due respect to the big bank branches and the pharmacies and all of those things, that we can have more diversity. And a lot of that is a function of who's owning and who they're renting to. I would love to bring, well, I see that Tom has something that he'd like to add in. So why don't we get a couple of closing comments from Ray, and then if there's time, if the producers allow us, we would love to hear from Tom, who says that he has one more thing that he'd like to add to the conversation. So Ray, do you have any additional comments to add here?
Yeah, I just want to say that KMOJ has prided itself over the years to be a supporter of Black business. Even though we're a public radio station, we tend to function as a quote unquote commercial outlet, but we have to go by FCC regulations where we have to be careful in some things we say, but we still are a valuable medium for any business, whether you're small, medium, or large, in the Black business arena. We're very well positioned to help this growth, and also to help Minneapolis and St. Paul recover from what we've been through. The unrest, although it was a tragedy to see George Floyd die like that, the unrest came on the heels of a pandemic, and it just sort of multiplied the pain we were going through already before that. And it affected KMOJ a little bit too. There were some businesses that couldn't advertise with us anymore, but there were other businesses and other agencies and organizations that still had revenue to spend with us because they still needed to get their message out that they were still in business. So it was critical for a lot of companies and organizations to let people know they could still serve people. And because of that extra revenue that they had, they could still let people know they were around. So we were able to help companies like that and businesses like that continue to offer much needed services in the community. And as long as KMOJ has a signal to broadcast, we're still a viable option to get the message out. Arbitron has us ranked #1 in this market to reach the Black community. 91% of the Black residents in this market listen to KMOJ. So if you got a business, whether it's Black owned or you cater to the Black audience, you've got KMOJ as an ally and as a very supportive friend. And we're glad to be a part of this movement to help rebuild both Minneapolis and St. Paul.
We assume that means that KMOJ is not being shy about encouraging Black folks to vote, 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 vote.
Oh no, we're definitely on that mission. But the one thing that we cannot do is that we cannot tell folks to vote for Biden Harris. We're bound by FCC regulation, or we cannot extend political messages on the airwaves. Trust me, if that was different, we'd be all over it.
Tom,
but we can still get the message out to register to vote. We're very big on that, so we're not going to shy away from that mission.
Hopefully, people know how to vote by this point. If they don't, what can we do?
Yes.
This will be quick.
And add a couple of things.
Yeah, this will be quick. I think Michael had asked, one thing that I will ask the Biden campaign to do is, I think, for the long term, since we've been talking about this underfunding, undercapitalization of the Black businesses, one thing we really have to look at is what we call the community development financial institutions, the CDFIs. In town here, we have about 4 of them that are run by our people. There's Metropolitan Economic Development Association, African Economic Development Solutions, Neighborhood Development Corporation, and I forget the other one. Maybe Stefanetta can remind me which one. There are about 4 of them because especially when this paycheck protection program came out, a part of the coronavirus bill funding, most people that I know, most of the Black businesses that I know that were able to get the paycheck protection funding, a lot of them got them through these CDFIs, but a lot of these CDFIs, they also need more money. So that's something I think I will really encourage the Biden-Harris campaign to look to see if that can also be built in for future, at least, if not in the short term.
Can you repeat that last part again? Because I want to make sure, because we've, a lot of like the theme and the current through our conversation tonight has been we need money, right? In order to restart and to grow our businesses, keep them going and scale. So if you could just repeat that last aspect, because I think it's important for folks to understand the CDFI and the access to capital issue in the way that you just articulated it.
Yeah, so I mean, some of these the CDFIs, a lot of times they have to get money maybe through the bank. I don't know how they are structured, but I just know that for a lot of micro businesses, because our Black businesses, they're not actually even small business. They're what we call micro businesses. So a lot of the traditional banking institutions can't really work with our our micro businesses. So a lot of the micro businesses end up working with these CDFIs. And so they have been actually very, very critical during this COVID pandemic because a lot of the SBA paycheck protection money has ended up flowing through the few of our Black businesses that were able to get this funding. A lot of them got it through the CDFIs. And so we need to figure out how we can strengthen them. And this is more of a strategic thing, and just try, that the Biden campaign, future presidency maybe can look into.
I want to thank all of our amazing, we're getting this signal right now from the production that we need to wrap up. Would love, obviously, to continue this conversation if we could, but want to thank each of our panelists and, of course, Mayor Carter for participating tonight in this panel and sharing your thoughts with us. Going to turn it over to Jess to take us home.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining our first Make It Happen Monday event. We will be hosting weekly Monday night events with different Black businesses here in Minnesota. So please join us every Monday at 6 p.m. for that. We will also host weekly phone banks. We kept talking about call to action and how to get involved. So phone banks is something that we really need volunteers for. We're actually going to have one right after this panel. So join us tonight following this at 7 p.m. The link will be in the chat on how to sign that up. And then we also have just more exciting events specific to the African-American community like this, right? So please reach out to me to learn more about them and how to get involved these last 50 days. With that being said, thanks everyone and have a great night.